Pine Sea City. At 7:30 in the morning, in a dimly lit room, on a plush bed, Zhang Yuanqing woke up abruptly, clutching his head, his body curled up like a shrimp, his head throbbed as if it was about to split apart. It felt like steel needles were embedded in his brain, causing such severe pain that his scalp twitched, leading to auditory and visual hallucinations. Chaotic images flashed across his mind, and meaningless noise filled his ears. Zhang Yuanqing knew his old ailment had resurfaced. With shaky movements, he crawled out of bed, opened the drawer of the bedside table, and fumbled for the medicine bottle. He anxiously unscrewed the cap, poured out 5 or 6 blue pills, and swallowed them whole. Then, he threw himself back onto the bed, gasping for breath, enduring the intense pain. About 10 seconds later, the soul-rending headache subsided and then disappeared. Phew, Zhang Yuanqing exhaled a sigh of relief, his forehead covered in cold sweat. In high school, he had contracted a strange disease. The symptoms included uncontrollable recall of all past memories, including forgotten junk information, uncontrollable collection and analysis of external information, and an incredible level of control over his body by his brain. Fortunately, this state could not last too long, as it would be interrupted when his body couldn't bear the burden. It was this ability that allowed him to casually get into Pine Sea University, a prestigious institution ranked among the top in the country. Zhang Yuanqing referred to this state as brain overload. He thought he might be evolving into a superhuman, but the frequent interruptions were due to his body's inability to support this evolution. When he shared this theory with his doctor, the doctor was stunned, didn't understand, and suggested he visit the psychiatric department downstairs. In any case, the hospital couldn't identify the cause of his illness. Later on, his mother brought back a miracle drug from abroad. As long as he took the medication regularly, he wouldn't have an episode. It must be because I didn't rest well last night. I was too tired. It's all Jiang Yuer's fault for insisting on playing games in my room in the middle of the night. Although he said this, he felt a quiet heaviness in his heart because Zhang Yuanqing knew that the medication was becoming less effective and his condition was worsening. I'll have to increase the dosage in the future. Zhang Yuanqing put on his slippers and walked over to the window, pulling open the curtains with a swish. The sunlight rushed in eagerly, filling the room. In April, Pine Sea City was bathed in brilliant spring light, and the morning breeze was cool and comfortable. Thump, thump. At this moment, there was a knock at the door, and his grandmother called from outside. Yuanzi, time to get up. I'm not getting up. Zhang Yuanqing coldly refused. He wanted to sleep in. With such beautiful spring weather and it being the weekend, wouldn't it be a waste of life not to sleep in? You have 3 minutes. If you don't get up, I'll splash water on you. His grandmother was even colder and more ruthless. Okay. Zhang Yuanqing immediately capitulated. He knew his hot-tempered grandmother was fully capable of doing this. When Zhang Yuanqing was still in elementary school, his father died in a car accident. His strong-willed mother didn't remarry and brought her son back to Pine Sea City to settle down, leaving him in the care of his grandparents. She threw herself into her career, becoming a formidable woman admired by her relatives. Later, his mother bought her own house, but Zhang Yuanqing didn't like the empty, large flat, so he continued living with his grandparents. After all, his mother was always out early and back late, often on business trips, and focused on her career. Even on weekends, if she wasn't working overtime, she would order takeout when it was time for meals. The thing she said to him most was, "Do you have enough money? If not, tell mom." A strong-willed mother who could satisfy all your financial needs sounded great, but Zhang Yuanqing would always smile and tell his mother, "The pocket money from grandma and aunt is enough." Yes, and his aunt, the woman who insisted on playing games in his room last night, was his aunt. Zhang Yuanqing yawned and turned the handle of his bedroom door, walking into the living room. This apartment in his grandmother's house, including the shared area, was about 150 square meters. When they sold the old house to buy this new one, Zhang Yuanqing remembered it was over 40,000 per square meter. 6 or 7 years later, the price in this neighborhood had risen to 110,000 per square meter, nearly doubling. Fortunately, his grandfather had the foresight. If they still had the old house, Zhang Yuanqing would have to sleep in the living room. After all, he was grown up now and couldn't share a room with his aunt anymore. The long dining table in the living room, the culprit of his headache, was gulping down her porridge, her pink slippers swinging under the table. She had a delicate and pretty face, a sweet-looking round face, and a mole at the corner of her right eye due to just waking up. Her messy, voluminous waves added a lazy charm to her. His aunt's name was Jiang Yuer, 4 years older than him. Seeing Zhang Yuanqing come out, his aunt licked the porridge from the corner of her mouth and said in surprise, "Wow, you're up so early. That's not like you. It's your mother's doing. Why are you cursing?" "I'm just telling the truth." Zhang Yuanqing scrutinized his aunt's beautiful face. She was full of energy and radiantly beautiful. They say the night doesn't cheat those who stay up late, gifting them dark circles under their eyes. But this rule didn't seem to apply to the woman before him. His grandmother in the kitchen heard the noise, peeked out, and after a moment, came out with a bowl of porridge. His grandmother's black hair was mixed with strands of silver, her gaze sharp. You could tell at a glance she was a grumpy old lady. Although her sagging skin and faint wrinkles had taken away her youthful charm, you could still see she was quite a beauty in her youth. Zhang Yuanqing took the bowl of porridge from his grandmother, gulped down a mouthful, and asked, "Where's Grandpa?" "He's out for a walk," his grandmother replied. His grandfather was a retired police officer. Even in his old age, he lived a very regular life, going to bed at 10 every night and waking up at 6 in the morning. His pretty aunt, while sipping her porridge, said cheerfully after breakfast, "Your aunt will take you to the mall to buy some spring clothes." "You're being so kind." Just as Zhang Yuanqing was about to agree, his grandmother next to him gave him a murderous look. "If you dare to go, I'll break your legs." "Mom, why are you like this?" His aunt complained with an aggrieved look. "I just want to buy UNC some spring clothes, and you're not happy." Although nephew has a nephew in it, he's still family. His grandmother overruled everything. "Do you want your legs broken too?" His aunt pouted and continued eating her porridge. Upon hearing the tug of war between mother and daughter, Zhang Yuanqing immediately knew that his grandmother must have arranged another blind date for his younger aunt. His quirky aunt, on the other hand, was trying to pull him into the mix.I in the past. This was always the case. She would bring her nephew to the blind date, sit for a few minutes, and the nephew with social prowess would charm the blind date. The two men would have a great time talking about everything from the state of the nation to the world situation, completely leaving her out of the picture. All she had to do was drink her beverage and play with her phone. The blind date would feel satisfied, thinking that he had demonstrated enough social experience and knowledge in front of a beautiful woman, thus feeling happy and self-satisfied. Jiang Yuer was delicate and cute from a young age, praised by neighbors for her beauty, sweetness, and politeness, which made her very popular among the elders. With such a beautiful daughter, the grandmother was naturally on high alert, warning her not to date too early in junior high school, and not to go out with male classmates. The younger daughter did not disappoint her, not having a boyfriend until she graduated from university. However, once she entered society, especially after turning 25 years old, the grandmother began to get anxious. "I only told you not to date too early. I didn't mean for you to end up single. How many years of youth does a woman have?" So, she gathered her old friends and searched all over for information on talented young men, arranging blind dates for her daughter. "Grandma, she obviously doesn't want to start dating yet. Forced relationships won't be sweet," Zhang Yuanqing offered while munching on a bun. "How about you arrange a blind date for me? I'm sweet." His grandmother replied angrily, "You're still young, what's the rush? There are plenty of female classmates in university, can't you find one yourself? Stop causing trouble or I'll beat you." The grandmother was a southern woman, but her temper was not gentle at all, especially fiery. Even Zhang Yuanqing's mother, a career woman, didn't dare to argue with her grandmother. "I've grown up, okay? I've been a craftsman for several years now." Zhang Yuanqing mumbled to himself after breakfast. Under the strong request of the grandmother, the younger aunt returned to her room to change clothes and makeup, and went out for a blind date. The younger aunt applied a light makeup, which made her look even more radiant and attractive. She wore a fluffy round-necked knitted top with a long coat, light-colored narrow jeans wrapped around two long legs, slender and round. The narrow trouser legs were tucked into black marten boots. A simple and natural style of dress, not flamboyant or flashy, but very delicate. The younger aunt cast him a look, picked up her bag, twisted her waist and walked out the door. "Mom, I'm going on a blind date." Zhang Yuanqing returned to his room, leisurely changed into a black t-shirt, a windbreaker, and put on running shoes. A few minutes later, he opened the door of his room. The grandmother was cleaning the living room, and when she saw him come out, she stopped what she was doing and looked at him quietly. Zhang Yuanqing mimicked his younger aunt's tone. "Mom, I'm going on a blind date too. Get back in here." The grandmother raised her broom threateningly. "If you dare to step out of this door, I'll break your legs." "All right." Zhang Yuanqing obediently returned to his room. Sitting at the desk, he sent a message to his younger aunt on his phone. "I failed before I even started, what a hero to no avail. Speak in normal language." His younger aunt must be driving. Her reply was brief and to the point. "I was stopped by grandma at home, you go on the blind date yourself." The younger aunt sent a voice message. Zhang Yuanqing clicked on it, and the speaker sounded Jiang Yuer's huffing voice. "What use are you?" The younger aunt retracted a voice message, and then sent another one, this time with a different tone, coquettishly. "My dear nephew, hurry up, your aunt loves you the most. Women, she thinks I'm going to risk grandma's wrath just because she acts cute. At least send me a red envelope." At this moment, a slightly harsh bell rang. Zhang Yuanqing went to the living room and, under his grandmother's gaze, pressed the intercom button and asked, "Who is it?" "Delivery," came a voice from the speaker. Zhang Yuanqing pressed the door open button. After 2 or 3 minutes, a delivery man in uniform came up by elevator, carrying a parcel in his arms. "Is this Zhang Yuanqing?" "That's me. I didn't order anything online." He signed for it with a puzzled look, glanced at the parcel information. There was no sender on the parcel, but the address was Hangzhou City in the neighboring Jiangnan province. He returned to his room, found a paper cutter from the desk drawer, and opened the parcel. Inside was a black card wrapped in bubble wrap and a yellow envelope. Zhang Yuanqing picked up the black card the size of an ID card. It seemed to be made of metal, but it was very warm to the touch. The card was very beautifully made. The edges were slightly silver cloud pattern, and in the center was a black moon. The black moon was very delicately printed, with irregular patches on the surface clearly visible. What is this? With a curious heart, he opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. Unz, I've got something very interesting. I thought it could change my life, but I don't have the ability to control it. I think if it were you, it shouldn't be a problem. Brothers for life, this is my gift to you. Lei Yibing. Did Gu Bing send this? After reading the content of the letter, Zhang Yuanqing frowned. What does it mean to change the life? What does it mean to be uncontrollable? Really, he didn't speak clearly. He looked at the black card again and again, confirming that it was just an ordinary card. If it was extraordinary, it was that the touch was good, and the material seemed to be rare. Could it be the supreme card of a top club? Only a rare man like me can handle a 36D girl. Lei Yibing was his buddy from childhood. His nickname was Abing, 2 years older than him. When his grandparents had not bought a new house, the two families lived in the same alley. Lei Yibing, with his strength and speed as his advantages, and intelligence as his weakness, had always protected him since childhood. He was at the forefront in fights, taking the beatings while Zhang Yuanqing retreated. Whoever mocked Zhang Yuanqing for being a child without a father, Lei Yibing would stand up for him. So Zhang Yuanqing always called him Brother Bing. Abing's high school grades were not ideal, so he went to college in the neighboring Jiangnan province. Since then, their contact has lessened as they were separated by distance. While Zhang Yuanqing put the black card into the pocket of his assault jacket, he picked up his phone and sent a teasing message to Brother Bing. What's the supreme card of which club? You should at least give me the address or contact information. This message was sent, and there was no reply. After half an hour, Zhang Yuanqing simply dialed Brother Bing's number. After 2 beeps, the call was connected, and a man's deep voice came from the speaker. Hello. I am Lei Yibing's father. Uncle Lei. Zhang Yuanqing was taken aback, then rejoiced. Is Brother Bing back in Shanghai this week? Let him answer the phone, I have something to find him. There was silence on the other end of the phone, followed by a sorrowful voice. Unz, I'm in Jiangnan province. Abing, he's missing. Brother Bing is missing. Zhang Yuanqing stood still on the spot. After a few seconds, he asked in a confused and urgent tone, what happened? How could Brother Bing disappear? He obviously sent me something. He disappeared the day before yesterday. Your Aunt Zhou and I received a notice from the school yesterday and rushed over immediately. Uncle Lei's voice was low. Did you call the police? What did the Public Security Bureau say? Zhang Yuanqing asked in a deep voice. Uncle Lei was silent for a long time, and then hesitated to say, this matter is a bit difficult to say. Abing's disappearance is a bit strange. Strange? What does that mean? Zhang Yuanqing was stunned. Uncle Lei said, Abing disappeared in the dormitory late at night the day before yesterday. The police retrieved the surveillance in the dormitory corridor and found that Abing did not leave the dormitory all night. But the next morning, he was gone. The students in the same dormitory said that they saw him before going to bed, and when they woke up, there was no one. They thought he just went out. This is impossible. Zhang Yuanqing blurted out, can people disappear out of thin air? Even a 3-year-old child would not believe such an excuse. Zhang Yuanqing suppressed his anxiety, lowered his voice and said, Uncle Lei, did Brother Bing offend anyone at school? The first thing he thought of was that Brother Bing offended someone at school, and the other party had a certain power locally, so there was no problem with the surveillance. Because this often means that there is a cover-up behavior by the school. In the era of information explosion, anyone who has been on the internet has heard of similar things. The school leaders said they will try their best to cooperate with the police. The police told us to go home and wait for news, they will investigate. Your Aunt Zhou and I didn't sleep all night. Uncle Lei's voice was mixed with depression and worry. As expected, this kind of answer, damn it. Zhang Yuanqing took a deep breath and comforted, don't worry first, you know my grandfather and cousin both work in the Public Security Bureau. I'll ask them how to handle this kind of thing and what to pay attention to. If you have any questions, feel free to call me. Also, you must ask the students at the school. If Brother Bing offended someone, there must be students who know. Uncle Lei felt a little relieved and said, I see, Unz, don't worry too much, I will tell you as soon as I have news. After hanging up the phone, Zhang Yuanqing was a bit restless, pacing back and forth in the room, worrying about Brother Bing's safety. People can't just disappear for no reason. If the surveillance can't capture it, it's definitely because the surveillance has been tampered with. It's just unknown who Brother Bing offended, but a junior college student, who can he offend? Wait, disappeared the day before yesterday, the day before yesterday. Zhang Yuanqing was suddenly startled. The express package from Jiangnan province to Shanghai takes 2 to 3 days. According to the calculation of time, Brother Bing disappeared on the night he sent me the package. Is this a coincidence? Or is there any connection? Thinking of this, he instinctively went to touch the black card in his pocket, but when he put his hand into his pocket, he suddenly froze. The black card is gone. Did it fall on the ground? Zhang Yuanqing quickly lowered his head and his eyes quickly swept across the floor of the room. No, he lay on the ground and looked under the bed. There was a layer of dust under the bed, as well as some coins, pens, buttons and other odds and ends, but there was no black card. The black card is gone, and he remembers clearly that he put it in his pocket. How did it disappear out of thin air? Thinking of Brother Bing's mysterious disappearance, the strange letter, and the mysteriously disappearing black card, Zhang Yuanqing felt an inexplicable fear and confusion in his heart. Is the black card related to Brother Bing's disappearance? Or is it an important clue? Taking a deep breath, Zhang Yuanqing decided to use his old disease to restart his memory. He first poured cold water into the glass, took a pill bottle from the bedside table, unscrewed it, then took off his shoes and lay on the bed. After doing all this, he closed his eyes, motionless, imagining his father's face in his mind. The condition for the active triggering of the old disease is to calm down and imagine a picture, preferably one that has been seen before, but is not very clear. This will stimulate brain activity, slowly warm up, and finally boil the brain power. After many years, the father's face has long been blurred, which is the perfect object. Time passed by minute. The father's face gradually changed from blurry to clear, and finally was clearly visible, and Zhang Yuanqing's heart beat violently, like an overloaded engine. At this moment, time seemed to flow backwards, and the picture an hour ago, like a movie, flashed frame by frame. He saw himself open the express package, read the letter, put the black card into the pocket of his assault jacket, and then sent a message to Brother Bing. To this point, he sat at the table motionless for the next half an hour, brushed short videos for 10 minutes, and sent a few erotic pictures with the LSPs in the game group, saved a few high-quality pictures, then read a novel for a few minutes, because he always thought about the card. So he called Brother Bing. After hanging up the phone, the key moment came. He was anxious and walked around the room. This was the most likely time to drop the card. In the memory picture, he saw himself frowning and pacing in the room, then reaching out to touch the black card and found that the card was missing. Zhang Yuanqing suddenly opened his eyes, his face full of horror. Gone. The black card was gone, it disappeared out of thin air. What the hell did Brother Bing send me? For a moment, he felt a little scalp numb. Without thinking about it, he heard a chaotic noise in his ears, like the overlapping voices of countless people, and the broken pictures in his mind were like erupting volcanoes, rushing up in one fell swoop. Zhang Yuanqing felt a warm liquid flow over his nose, and his head was as if a steel nail had been driven in. He sat on the bedside with a distorted face, clumsily poured out 5 blue pills and put them in his mouth, then picked up the water cup. With a trembling hand, tilted his head back and swallowed the pills and water together. After a while, Zhang Yuanqing sat on the bedside, his face pale and gasping for breath. At this point, he can basically confirm that there is a certain connection between Brother Bing's disappearance and the black card. Brother Bing disappeared after sending me the black card, and that black card is strange, obviously not a common thing. This can't help but make people think that he may have been threatened and had to transfer the item reluctantly. But why didn't he hand over the black card to the local public security bureau, but send it to me? Can I, a college student who has never killed a chicken or slept, be more reliable than a police officer? Zhang Yuanqing suddenly thought of the detail that the surveillance and dormitory personnel did not notice any abnormalities, and to achieve this level, one must have a certain amount of power. Brother Bing did not hand over the black card to the local public security bureau. Is it because the public security bureau is also untrustworthy, or the person or force that caused him to disappear, whose influence covers the local public security bureau? He sent the black card to me because he knew that my grandfather was a retired police chief and my cousin was a public security chief, and they have a deep network in Songhai City. The people in Jiangnan province can't affect me. I have to tell my cousin about this. Ding dong. At that moment, he heard the doorbell ringing, the sound echoing from the entrance hall. Almost immediately, his grandmother's footsteps resonated as she crossed the living room to reach the entrance, turning the doorknob. Who are you looking for? Hello, we are investigators from the Kongyang District Public Security Bureau. Is Zhang Yuanqing at home? The response came from outside the door. An investigator from the Kongyang District Public Security Bureau? My cousin's place of work, looking for me. Instinctively, Zhang Yuanqing's heart skipped a beat. Just as he was about to sneak to the bedroom door to eavesdrop, he remembered something. He picked up his phone and deleted the chat and call logs with Bing. Then, he folded Bing's letter to him and pressed it under the potted plant on the windowsill. Only then did he feel at ease to crack open the door and observe secretly. From the entrance, he heard his grandmother's counter-questioning voice. What do you want with him? She didn't invite the investigator in but blocked the door instead. We need to ask him a few questions. Here are our credentials. The voice belonged to a lady, seductive in tone. The grandmother's gaze briefly lingered on the credentials before she frowned and stepped aside. Zhang Yuanqing timely opened the door and scrutinized the investigator entering the living room. The lead investigator was dressed in a black suit with a white shirt and black vest, holding a black wooden cane. His face was thin with a small mustache, his hair meticulously combed back. This strong British style, along with the mustache, inadvertently reminded people of a gentleman who studied abroad during the Republic of China. To the left of the gentleman was a young, beautiful female investigator. Her features were striking, seemingly mixed race, with a playful smile and bright eyes. She stood around 175 centimeters tall, with legs that could rival a supermodel's. Dressed in a suit, the hem of her shirt tucked into her waist, outlining her slender waist and prominent chest. She was efficient and exquisite. The last investigator had a dull expression, wore black-rimmed glasses, and had slightly messy hair, giving off a nerdy vibe. "I'm Zhang Yuanqing. What can I do for you?" While Zhang Yuanqing was observing them, the investigators were also sizing up this young man. The mixed-race female investigator said with a smile, "We're investigators from the Kongyang District Public Security Bureau. We have some questions for you. Please cooperate with the investigation." "Sure." Zhang Yuanqing led them to sit on the living room couch. His grandmother poured water for the three investigators, then looked at her grandson with confusion. She couldn't understand why her warm, outgoing, and sociable grandson, whom she had raised single-handedly, would need to be questioned by the Public Security Bureau. The young investigator with messy hair and a dull look took out a small notebook and pen and opened the pen cap. The man with the slick back hair sat on the sofa, his hands resting on his cane, and said solemnly, "Do you know Lei Yibing?" As expected, it was about Bing. They came so quickly. Zhang Yuanqing answered truthfully, "We've been friends since childhood. Why are you suddenly asking about this?" In his mind, a doubt flashed. His cousin was the captain of the second team of the Kongyang District Public Security Bureau. Since these investigators came to visit, they must have checked his family background. In theory, knowing that they're visiting the family of a team captain from the same bureau, shouldn't they give a heads up, say hello? But there was no movement from his cousin's side, clearly unaware. Otherwise, even if he didn't come along, he would have called to inform him. "Oh, best friends." The man gently tapped his shiny leather shoe and said at a leisurely pace, "Well, Lei Yibing has gone missing. The Public Security Bureau in Hangzhou City, Jiangnan Province, contacted us, saying that Lei Yibing sent out a package the morning before he disappeared, and the recipient was you." His gaze was as deep as a pool, seeming to see through people. "Is this true?" Zhang Yuanqing showed a shocked and confused expression. "Missing? How is that possible?" The nerdy investigator reminded, "You just need to answer yes or no." "Yes, just now, I received a package, but the sender's name was not written on it. I was wondering who sent me the package." Zhang Yuanqing nodded solemnly. "There's no use denying this. If the bureau could check the courier, checking the community surveillance would be even easier." The man with slick back hair nodded and asked, "What's in the package?" "We hope you can answer truthfully. This is a very important clue for us." Zhang Yuanqing replied, "The package was empty." "Empty?" The man with the slick back hair squinted his eyes, his gaze piercing as if he could see through Zhang Yuanqing. "Even though I lied, the black card disappeared as if it was never there. It's basically the same as being empty. I'm not afraid of you checking." Zhang Yuanqing didn't avoid his gaze and met his eyes sincerely, saying, "When I opened the package, I found it was empty, with only air cushions for protection." "Oh, that package is still in my room. If you don't believe me, you can go and see." If Bing's disappearance is as he guessed, he must keep it a secret for now and wait for his cousin to come home from work before explaining everything. In such potentially risky situations, it's safest to discuss with family first. The man with the slick back hair gestured to his female subordinate with his eyes. She walked into the room with a smile. In a moment, she returned to the living room and nodded at her colleagues. The man with the slick back hair pondered for a moment and said, "If it's convenient, we would like to check your room and computer. Also, may I see your phone?" Zhang Yuanqing unlocked his phone screen without hesitation and handed it over. The man with the slick back hair took the phone. After a few simple swipes with his thumb, he returned it to Zhang Yuanqing and patiently waited. Half a quarter later, the female investigator came out. This time, she shook her head. The man with the slick back hair nodded slightly and said kindly, "Thank you for your cooperation. We won't disturb you any longer." Zhang Yuanqing quickly asked, "Can I ask about Lei Yibing's situation?" His question was both out of genuine concern and to cover up his lie. Hearing that his childhood friend was missing and not asking about the situation would be too suspicious, the man with the slick back hair patiently answered, "Lei Yibing disappeared from his dormitory. The corridor surveillance didn't capture him leaving. According to one of his roommates, he saw Lei Yibing in bed when he got up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. But when he woke up in the morning, Lei Yibing was gone." After 24 hours of not being able to contact him, their tutor notified the school, who immediately reported it to the police. For more detailed information, you'll have to call the local public security bureau. This matches what Uncle Lei said. It seems that the local public security bureau has made no progress. Well, it could also be that this guy doesn't want to tell me. Zhang Yuanqing nodded. I understand. The burly man, accompanied by two subordinates, headed towards the security door, paused halfway, turned around and said, if you find any clues, you must notify us promptly. Do not withhold anything from us. Zhang Yuanqing was about to nod when he heard him say with an insinuating smile, otherwise, you might be the next one to disappear. The next one to disappear is me. What does he mean by that? Is he threatening me? If I don't hand over the black card, will I vanish like Bingo? But speaking of which, what's the deal with that card? It disappeared out of thin air. Even if I wanted to hand it over, I couldn't. Thanks for the reminder. He returned a smile without much humor. Regardless, he'll wait until his cousin gets off work. Bingo definitely wouldn't want the card to fall into the hands of the Public Security Bureau, otherwise, he wouldn't have sent it to him. Besides, as a best friend, he believes Bingo wouldn't trick him. His grandmother next to him turned black and coldly said, goodbye. What's wrong with this guy? Cursing her grandson out of nowhere, the burly man laughed, took a business card out of his left suit pocket, and handed it over. Contact me anytime if you need anything. After Zhang Yuanqing took it, he led his two subordinates away. How did Bing disappear? Sigh, I'll take some time to visit Bing's mother. After they left, the grandmother said with worry, the two families used to be neighbors, and they've known each other for over a decade, so there are some feelings. Zhang Yuanqing said tiredly, Grandma, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm going back to my room to rest. If I don't get up by noon, don't wake me up. When Grandpa comes back, you tell him about this and ask him to contact Uncle Lei. He was up until 2 or 3 in the morning playing with his aunt, and then he woke up early due to his old illness. He was already lacking sleep, and to find Bingo and the black card, he had to overuse his brain. Now, his brain was dizzy from tiredness. After his grandmother nodded, Zhang Yuanqing returned to his room. He closed the door, took off his shoes, and fell onto the bed, falling into a deep sleep. Inside the black business car, Li Dongzi sat on the leather chair, his gold-handled cane leaning against the edge of the chair, his palm holding a high-footed cup, shaking the crimson wine. Guanya, did you find anything in the room just now? He turned his head to look at the mixed-race beauty sitting next to him. Guanya lazily leaned on the soft chair, her long legs tightly together, her face serious. There's a major discovery. Speak. Li Dongzi ordered. The tech guy in the back seat also moved his gaze from his phone and looked over. Guanya said solemnly, that kid is a fan of mature women, his study materials are full of mature ladies, but his trash can is so clean, it's simply unreasonable. He has a wide social circle, all kinds of groups, but only active in game groups and LSP groups. Other groups have set message blocking. There are no other entertainment supplies in his room except for the game console. This kid is actually a bit of a loner. By the way, boss, you know what LSP means, right? The mixed-race beauty made a joking gesture. The two companions were stunned, and Li Dongzi quickly interrupted, angrily saying, oh my god, I really want to kick your ass with my boot. I'm talking business with you, why are you talking about all this nonsense? I've told you many times, don't be a hooligan, don't make dirty jokes, it's a bad habit, it's not elegant. The leggy beauty was not afraid of her angry boss, and laughed, don't be so boring, a little joke helps liven up the atmosphere. She slowly put away her smile, and said, I didn't find anything suspicious on his computer, but under the potted plants on the windowsill, I found the letter that Lei Yibing sent to him. Lei Yibing did send him something, most likely the character card, but I don't know what profession it is. Li Dongzi was silent for a few seconds, closing his eyes to rest. Come back here tomorrow, well, if he hasn't disappeared by then. In a daze, Zhang Yuanqing felt something soft and plump pressing on him, making it somewhat hard to breathe. Opening his eyes, he saw a round and delicate face, with a mischievous smile. His aunt giggled, you naughty boy, dare to stand me up, I'll squash you with my bum. She sat on her nephew like a duck, leaning forward, lifting her hips and sitting down hard. Zhang Yuanqing grunted, almost suffocated by the pressure, and in anger, he arched his back, flipping this woman over. Amid his aunt's surprised yelp, he saw that it was already dark outside the window. Unknowingly, he had slept from morning till night. Dinner time. His aunt lay sideways on the bed, using a series of deadly kicks to aim at her nephew's buttocks. Don't retaliate, I respect the old and love the young, I won't stoop to your level. Zhang Yuanqing slid to the edge of the bed, put on his shoes, and walked out of the room. The living room was filled with a rich aroma. His grandparents were sitting at the dining table having dinner. His grandfather had silver hair, was thin and tall, with a serious face and a man of few words. How is it, is the match I arranged for you okay? At the dinner table, his grandmother asked with anticipation. Not bad, with an annual salary of $1 million, a corporate executive, very satisfied. His aunt nodded like a pecking chicken. You always say this, but you always end up blocking them. His grandmother pointed a finger and jabbed her daughter's head vigorously, scolding, be sensible, think about how old you are. Yeah. Zhang Yuanqing gloated on the side, but then his calf was kicked hard by Jiang Yuer. The two kicked each other under the table, causing a continuous clanking noise. If you're not eating, go back to your room. With a roar from his grandmother, Zhang Yuanqing and his aunt immediately bowed their heads to eat. Grandma, when will my cousin come back? Zhang Yuanqing asked. His uncle's family lived across the street. A while ago, his wealthy aunt and unrestrained uncle went abroad for a vacation. During this period, his cousin always had dinner here. He said he's working overtime tonight and won't be back. He's the kind of person who works like there's no tomorrow, completely different from his idle father. His grandmother complained, overtime. Zhang Yuanqing let out a disappointed "oh." After dinner, Zhang Yuanqing and Jiang Yuer each went back to their rooms, leaving their grandmother to clean up the mess. Back in his room, Zhang Yuanqing locked the door, picked up his phone and dialed his cousin's number. Since he couldn't say it face to face, he might as well call. Communicating over the phone, after all, is not as clear as face to face. The call went through quickly, but the speaker played a bird-like shutdown tone. In a meeting? Zhang Yuanqing reluctantly hung up the phone. His cousin, as the captain of the security team, was busy with work, had irregular meals, and it was not uncommon for him to be unreachable. He was used to it. Zhang Yuanqing lay on the bed, looking at the ceiling, letting his thoughts scatter, assuming that the disappearance of his brother-in-law was man-made, and the target was the black card. Then he had to be careful. The safest way was to give the black card to his cousin and let his cousin report it to the higher-ups. With the administrative level of the Songhai City Public Security Bureau, the influence of the forces in Jiangnan province is limited, but the problem is, the black card is gone. This is the most troublesome. Zhang Yuanqing scratched his head in distress. A black card that can disappear out of thin air, thinking about it is terrifying. If he can't find the black card, he can't hand it over to the country. He can only be honest with his cousin first, let him report to the higher-ups, and then follow their arrangements. He's just an ordinary college student, he can't do anything. Suddenly, Zhang Yuanqing felt a little pain and heat on his forehead. He scratched it, and the pain intensified. Huh? It hurts and it's hot, what's going on? He walked somewhat bewilderedly from the bed to the dressing mirror by the window, scrutinizing his reflection. That eye in the dressing mirror, a young man's face was reflected. He was handsome, with fair skin, without the toughness beaten out by society, nor the vicissitudes washed out by time. He only had the youthful vitality of a young man. On his forehead, there was a black moon mark that was vivid and lifelike, with irregular patches on the surface clearly visible. At the bottom of the moon mark, there was something like a progress bar, showing 90% this. Zhang Yuanqing stepped back in surprise. He rubbed his forehead vigorously, but the mark was like a tattoo, it couldn't be rubbed off. Why is there such a thing on my forehead? When did it appear? He had confused thoughts in his mind, mixed with panic and bewilderment. Wait a minute. Isn't this pattern the black moon on the card? He was stunned at first, then his thoughts suddenly clicked into place. The black card wasn't lost, but had entered his body in a way he couldn't understand, turning into the mark on his forehead. Yes, he was puzzled. He noticed that the progress bar under the black moon had become 92%. With each jump in the numbers, his forehead burned. What is this, a supernatural phenomenon? High technology? Illusion? At this moment, the contents of the letter came to mind again. This is a gift that can change life. The black card is really a treasure, so my previous guess was correct. Someone coveted this card. The soldier didn't want the other party to succeed, so he sent it to me, and he disappeared because of it. Zhang Yuanqing was worried about his brother-in-law, while he stared at the progress bar with anticipation. What will happen when the progress bar reaches 100%? Having witnessed the magic in front of him, he was full of curiosity about the upcoming changes. After several bouts of burning pain, the progress bar at the bottom of the black moon finally completed its journey, reaching 100%. The next moment, a voice devoid of emotional fluctuations and feelings sounded in his ear. Roll card restart complete. Name, waiting to be named, please name immediately. Race, human. Profession, night wanderer. Level, 0 skills, none experience, 0% morality, 60. Initial value, there was a note under morality, never let your morality drop below 60, before you might not have had a choice, but now please be a good person. Staring at the emerging, luminescent blue character attribute panel floating before him, Zhang Yuanqing was stunned for a moment, wondering what this thing was. He tentatively asked, system? As a skilled surfer of the internet, he was well versed in many things. A voice without emotional fluctuation echoed again in his ears, please name your character immediately. A luminescent blue handwriting box popped up from the attribute panel, which was frozen mid-air. Not a system, otherwise the intelligence would be too low, unable to communicate. With a step-by-step approach in mind, Zhang Yuanqing extended his finger and wrote his own name. Zhang Yuanqing, warning, do not use your real name. Can't use my real name? Zhang Yuanqing was taken aback, then wrote down a second name, Yuanshi Tianzun, naming successful. The spirit realm will be opened in 10 seconds, Yuanshi Tianzun, good luck. Listening to the echoing voice, Zhang Yuanqing was stunned again, wondering what was going on. Opening the spirit realm? Shouldn't you explain what the spirit realm is first? Before he had time to regain his composure, the 10-second countdown was already over. Ding, Spirit Realm map opened successfully. Welcome to Night Wanderer, Xiling Tunnel, number 0079. Difficulty level, S, type, single, death type, main task 1, survive for 3 hours. Main task 2, explore the 0079 Spirit Realm, current exploration degree, 0%, note, non-Spirit Realm items cannot be brought in. Introduction to the 0079 Spirit Realm. Do you know about the Xiling Tunnel, one of the top 10 strange tales of Songhai? The Xiling Tunnel was built at the end of the last century. During the construction of the tunnel, a construction team disappeared in the tunnel on a rainy night and never reappeared. The Security Bureau organized a search team to look for them for several days. They found a worker who participated in the excavation that night in the mountains, but the others were nowhere to be found. The surviving worker lived, but was subjected to some unknown stimulus and had mental problems, acting crazily. No matter how the security officer inquired, he only repeated one sentence over and over. He said, "Don't enter the temple, don't enter the temple." The voice in his ear became lower and lower, gradually inaudible. The scenery in front of him was like a wrinkled lake surface, becoming distorted and blurred. Suddenly, the picture gradually stabilized, with dim light shining on the uneven wall, and the ground was paved with fine stones. Where am I? Zhang Yuanqing looked around in surprise, finding himself in an old tunnel. The old-fashioned xenon lamps on the arch dome emitted a faint orange glow. An abandoned tunnel. Zhang Yuanqing looked around in a panic. Suddenly brought into an unfamiliar environment, anyone would be thrown into confusion. A tunnel? Is this the Xiling Tunnel from the ghost stories? As a native of Songhai City, he of course knew about the Xiling Tunnel, one of the top 10 ghost stories. When he was a child and refused to go to sleep at night, his grandmother would scare him with these ghost stories, but, never mind that the ghost stories were just figments of imagination, he had passed the real Xiling Tunnel just a few days ago when he went back to his hometown to pay respects to his father. The real Xiling Tunnel was nothing like this, so old and decrepit. Right, this is the Spirit Realm, not the real Xiling Tunnel. The cramped environment made him uneasy. Zhang Yuanqing cautiously moved forward. The only sound in his ears was his solitary footsteps. As he walked, he pondered over his situation, the information given by the voice in his head. Without a doubt, he had encountered a supernatural phenomenon. He was brought into the ghost stories and was to complete tasks assigned by a mysterious force. That voice gave me 2 tasks, to survive for 3 hours and to explore the Spirit Realm. The difficulty level is S, and it's a solo death type. This death type makes me feel very uneasy. Surviving for 3 hours implied that there would be great danger. Exploring the Spirit Realm should mean exploring this tunnel. So, does this mean the tunnel is dangerous? He cautiously tensed his nerves. At the same time, a question flashed through his mind. What reward would he get for completing the task? Since it was a task, there must be a reward, right? Based on the attribute panel just now, my profession is Night Wanderer, but my level is 0, not 1. Becoming a Night Wanderer should be one of the rewards, right? What is a Night Wanderer? What Brother Bing said was right. This black card will indeed change a person's life, but I overlooked the second half of his words. This thing is hard to control. Is it referring to the level of danger? Zhang Yuanqing analyzed silently, combining the information he knew. Just then, the old-fashioned xenon lamp beside him flickered as if the circuit was unstable. In the fluctuating light and darkness, Zhang Yuanqing vaguely saw a figure wearing a miner's hat standing under the lamp. Damn. He was so scared that he jumped up. His train of thought was instantly interrupted and he bolted forward like a frightened deer. Looking back, the xenon lamp continued to provide light without flickering anymore. The shadowy figure with the miner's hat seemed to be just his imagination. With this scare, Zhang Yuanqing did not dare to stay in this ghostly place any longer and quickly moved towards the outside of the tunnel. The echo of his footsteps filled the quiet tunnel. Zhang Yuanqing did not dare to stop and continued to run for about 5 or 6 minutes. The old-fashioned xenon lamp on the arch dome flickered again, but this time, there was no shadowy figure with a miner's hat. Did it not follow me? He felt slightly relieved, did not dare to linger, and kept walking quickly with his head down. Suddenly, his eyes caught a detail that made his heart stop. The orange xenon lamp cast a long shadow of him. At the edge of his shadow, there were more than a dozen other shadows. Have they been following me? A chill ran from his feet to his head, causing goosebumps all over his body. Zhang Yuanqing's face turned pale from fear and he started to run wildly. Finally, the exit of the tunnel appeared in front. The outside was bathed in the cold moonlight. Zhang Yuanqing burst out of the tunnel, bent over, panting and supporting himself on his knees. After catching his breath, he looked around at the surroundings. The round moon hung in the sky, alone and desolate. Under its glow, the stars lost their luster. The lush forest bathed in moonlight, casting large patches of dense shadows. He was in a desolate wilderness. The xenon lamps in the tunnel flickered a few times before all going out. The large tunnel entrance was pitch black and quiet, like the mouth of a beast ready to choose its prey. I need to leave quickly. Zhang Yuanqing felt a chill running down his spine and started to climb the rugged mountain path. After walking for about 10 steps, he turned back and saw a row of figures wearing miners' hats, their clothes worn out and heads hanging low, standing at the entrance of the tunnel. They stood in the shadow where the moonlight could not reach, silent, as if they were seeing him off. Zhang Yuanqing was so startled that he backed up a few steps and then turned to run up the mountain. The mountain path was flanked by lush branches and leaves, casting specks of moonlight on the ground, enough for Zhang Yuanqing to see the path clearly. However, the mountain was terrifyingly quiet. There were no insects chirping or birds singing in the forest, making Zhang Yuanqing's footsteps sound particularly loud. It's too quiet. There can't be no insects chirping in the mountains during this season. He looked around. The round moon was like a plate, the trees were swaying, and he had the feeling that something in the darkness was watching him. He didn't know how long he had been walking, but by the time his body was covered in a thin layer of sweat, Zhang Yuanqing finally walked out of the dense forest. His field of vision suddenly widened. The moonlight was like water, the surroundings were dead silent, and at the end of the rugged mountain path stood a dilapidated ancient temple, quietly standing in the darkness. This ancient temple had been abandoned for many years. The paint on the front door was mottled and black, full of holes. The lanterns under the eaves had fallen to the ground, leaving only the bamboo frames. The plaque was still there, covered in cobwebs, hanging crookedly under the eaves. However, the light was too dim to see what was written on it. The steps in front of the temple were cracked, with weeds growing in the cracks. This was a desolate mountainous area, with no villages in sight. Why would there be a temple here? Wait. A temple? Zhang Yuanqing suddenly realized, and it seemed as if he could hear the voice from the introduction to the spirit realm ringing in his ears. Do not enter the temple, do not enter the temple. According to the hint from that strange voice, I shouldn't enter the temple. No, I've already come out of the tunnel, which means, what I really need to explore is this dilapidated ancient temple. After hesitating for a while at the temple gate, Zhang Yuanqing cautiously stepped forward, heading towards the ancient temple. Standing in the darkness, stepping over the rotten threshold, what came into view was a vast courtyard. The courtyard was filled with waist-high wild grass. A rotten incense burner half a man's height was lying in the grass, weathered by countless years of wind and rain. Under his feet was a path paved with bluestone slabs, and wild grass grew in the crevices between the slabs. Following the undulating withered grass, looking at the end of the bluestone path, there was a dilapidated main hall. The foundation was very high, with 6 steps leading up to it. From inside the lattice door of the main hall, a dim light shone. There's light? Surrounded by silence, desolation, and decay, the bright moonlight shone down. In such an environment, that little glow did not bring a bit of warmth to Zhang Yuanqing. In fact, it felt even more terrifying. Treading on a batch of withered wild grass, he moved cautiously towards the main hall. In the vast environment, his footsteps echoed distinctly. Suddenly, Zhang Yuanqing's ears twitched as he heard an additional set of footfalls behind him. Something was following him. He abruptly turned around. The night was as tranquil as water, the wild grass was thriving, but there was nothing behind him. Did I imagine it? Zhang Yuanqing, his heart pounding, paused for a moment before continuing his journey. The footsteps returned. This time he heard them clearly. Something really was following him. It can't be this strange, can it? Encountering something unclean as soon as I entered the temple? He didn't dare to look back. Instead, he quickened his pace. The footsteps behind him also quickened. Zhang Yuanqing could no longer keep his composure. With goosebumps pricking his skin, he broke into a run towards the main hall. The footsteps behind him followed, chasing him relentlessly. In the chase, Zhang Yuanqing quickly burst through the wild grass, approaching the main hall. He leapt up the 6 steps in 2 strides and finally, with a loud clang, burst through the doors of the main hall. The footsteps behind him abruptly vanished. Huff, huff, he gasped for breath, finally daring to look back. The moonlight spilled onto the courtyard, illuminating the wild grass and stone path. It was so quiet it was frightening, but there was nothing there. Thank goodness it didn't follow. After catching his breath, Zhang Yuanqing gently closed the doors of the main hall, as if to shut out his fear. He then surveyed the interior of the main hall. On a high stone pedestal, a goddess draped in a fur cloak and dressed in splendid attire was enshrined. Her face was round and her eyes were long, radiating a sense of benevolence. This goddess held a whisk in one hand and made a grasping gesture with the other. It seemed that she was originally holding something, but now it was empty. On either side of her were a sword-wielding child and a book-holding maid. In front of the pedestal was a dust-covered offering table, on which stood a candle holder. A candle, as thick as a baby's arm and 20 centimeters long, burned quietly. The candlelight dispelled the darkness, seeming to also dispel Zhang Yuanqing's fear. He felt much more stable. On the left wall, 2 faded and cracked wooden plaques hung. They were filled with regular script characters. Zhang Yuanqing walked up to the wall and stared at the inscriptions in the dim candlelight. The text was in classical Chinese, his Chinese was quite good, and through a combination of guessing and reading, he gained a clearer understanding of his surroundings. This mountain was called Three Paths Mountain, and the deity enshrined in the temple was known as the goddess of Three Paths Mountain. This goddess was a local scholar from the early Ming dynasty who practiced on Three Paths Mountain. She was proficient in the art of talismans, well-versed in alchemy, and could pray for rain and exorcise evil spirits, blessing the region with favorable weather. She was therefore revered as a deity by the people. After her ascension, the local officials built this temple on Three Paths Mountain, naming it the Temple of the Goddess of Three Paths Mountain. The temple was managed by the successors of the goddess's teachings, who served as temple keepers. A temple from the early Ming dynasty, it's been 500 or 600 years, hasn't it? Zhang Yuanqing muttered to himself. At that moment, he inadvertently glanced under the offering table, and his heart skipped a beat. A dark shadow lay in the shadow under the table. His mind had been too frantic earlier, and the candlelight was dim, so he hadn't noticed it at first. Hardening his resolve, Zhang Yuanqing moved closer and saw that it was a skeleton, clad in a dust-covered uniform. A worker? Is this the construction team from that year? So, I really have entered the world of the ghost story. Just as Zhang Yuanqing made this guess, he thought of an even more horrifying possibility. Perhaps, like him, the construction team had accidentally entered this place. That's why the urban legend was born. If it was the former, this so-called spiritual realm was a scene generated from the ghost story, but if it was the latter, it meant that the ancient temple had always existed, and both the construction team and him at this moment were victims. Based on the historical background of the Temple of the Mountain Goddess, Zhang Yuanqing was more inclined to the latter. An entire construction team died in the temple, with only one survivor. This place really is deadly. Now that I've entered this temple, I'm at risk of unknown dangers at any moment. With a hiss, he drew a sharp breath, his nerves straining as he instinctively surveyed his surroundings. Then, he suddenly realized a detail that was terrifying upon reflection. This ancient temple had been around since the Ming dynasty, with a long history. How could the candles still be burning? Who was changing the candles in the main hall? The more he thought about it, the more horrified he felt, making the benevolent-looking sculpture seem eerie and sinister in the candlelight. The three clay sculptures, covered in dust, were vivid and highly detailed, especially their eyes. They stood on the pedestal, under the dim candlelight, looking down at Zhang Yuanqing from above. Sigh. Zhang Yuanqing suddenly didn't want to stay in the main hall any longer. He felt like he was in a desperate situation, a feeling of terror where it seemed like neither heaven nor earth would respond to his pleas. This place was extremely dangerous, yet he couldn't seek help from the outside world. He could only rely on himself. After some hesitation, he gritted his teeth and made up his mind, stooping to pull out the skeleton wrapped in work clothes. Swish. During the process of pulling, the work clothes were easily torn apart. After so many years, the clothes had long since decayed. Dragging the body into the candlelight, he suppressed his discomfort and began to examine it. Although the person was dead, the body could speak. By figuring out the cause of the other party's death, he could avoid many dangers. The sternum and several ribs are broken. There are fine cracks in the right shoulder, but it's not serious. The deceased had suffered a heavy blow while alive, but the specific cause of death could not be determined due to the long passage of time. Next, Zhang Yuanqing found several yellowed and brittle papers from the pockets of the deceased worker, which were quite old. The paper was written in small regular script. Zhang Yuanqing was delighted. The paper was obviously found by the worker in the temple, which would help him understand the situation of the ancient temple. With the help of the candlelight, he began to read the content on the paper carefully. Another junior brother disappeared last night. This is the third fellow who has mysteriously disappeared in the temple. The brothers say that there are ghosts in Sandow Mountain, or a demon with high cultivation that comes to the temple to catch and eat people every night. However, many disciples in the temple have cultivation skills, and the master is a famous person within 100 miles. Which demon would dare to come here for food? As for ghosts, my corpse-suppressing talisman and spirit-calling talisman are enough to solve them, so there's no need to bother the master. I have a bad feeling in my heart. I need to go to the eldest brother and discuss. Another person disappeared today. This is the fifth person. The master asked us to hide it from the incense guests, otherwise it would affect the temple's incense. He must know something. My elder brother and I plan to patrol at night. 3 days have passed, and 3 more people have disappeared during this period, but my elder brother and I have found no clues. It's calm at night. My uneasy premonition deepens. Elder brother was very strange today. He seems to have discovered something and appears very angry. I asked him, but he did not tell me. His mood is not good. I will ask him again tomorrow. The person who disappeared today is my eldest brother. I have searched the entire Sandow Mountain and have not found him. I can't stand it anymore. I'm going to ask the master for clarity, and the brothers in the temple also support me, because they are also very scared. The handwriting of this passage is a bit scribbled, showing that the owner of the note was somewhat collapsed. Zhang Yuanqing continued to read. After my constant questioning, the master finally agreed to tell me the truth. My premonition was correct. He indeed knew the reason for the mysterious disappearances of the junior brothers. But the master said, there are too many people talking during the daytime. After the sun sets, he will come to my room and tell me a secret that concerns the rise and fall of thousands of years. After dinner, I waited in my room, waiting for the sunset. Since people started disappearing at night, I have never looked forward to the night this much. The record on the paper stopped here. The broken chapter made people feel a bit uncomfortable. Zhang Yuanqing grimaced as he sorted out the information on the paper. During a certain year, the disciples of the mountain god temple began to disappear mysteriously one after another. The disciples were helpless, and the panic spread. And this matter, the temple master, their master, seemed to know the reason. This reason is related to a big secret of the rise and fall of thousands of years. Is the reason for the decline of the mountain god temple unknown? If I explore this source, can I complete the second mainline task? Zhang Yuanqing guessed that he put the brittle paper back into the work clothes of the skeleton, pushed the other party back under the table, out of sight, out of mind, and then began to think about what he should do next. There is so much information in the main hall. If you want to explore the ancient temple, you must go out. In this case, you must face the danger in the temple. In the ghost story of Xiling Tunnel, there was a worker who survived. If I follow his trajectory, I might be able to find a way to survive. After careful consideration, Zhang Yuanqing walked to the entrance of the main hall and opened the two well-preserved lattice doors. Creak, the wooden door axis made a sound that made people's teeth sour. He propped up the door frame, poked his head out to look around. The outside was silent, except for a bit of desolation and gloom. He did not see any danger. After observing for a while, he stepped out of the threshold, and along the goose-soft stone path on the left side of the main hall, he walked towards the backyard of the mountain god temple. The moonlight was like water, the wild grass was undulating. Zhang Yuanqing walked for a minute or two, and a group of buildings appeared in front. It was several connected bungalows forming a large quadrangle. The black tiles and white walls, the horizontal roof ridge, the eaves were latticed windows and doors. The gray lattice doors were either open, fallen or tightly closed. The paper used to paste the windows had been torn apart under the erosion of years. In the bright moonlight, like frost on the ground, he took a glance at the layout of the backyard of the mountain god temple under the moonlight. In addition to the quadrangle in front of him, there was also an arch-shaped door on the east side, which looked a bit like the back house of a large family in TV dramas, where there would be such an arch-shaped door to connect different courtyards. There was a towering tree planted in the courtyard next door, with lush branches and leaves, and twisted branches. In the undulating courtyard full of wild grass, he found several skeletons wrapped in work clothes. Carefully approaching, he examined them carefully. Each skeleton was severely damaged, with broken bones under the work clothes, but apart from the one in the main hall, the shoulder bones of the skeletons here were intact, without cracks. These people suffered terrible blows before they died and died miserably. A gust of wind blew, the branches and leaves rustled. Vaguely, Zhang Yuanqing heard the rustling sound brought by the wind, mixed with the whispering cries, "Help, help." In this desolate and silent night, Zhang Yuanqing's back was covered with cold sweat. He stood stiffly on the spot. For a while, the wind stopped, and the crying whispers also stopped with the wind. The courtyard next door seems a bit dangerous, but the things inside didn't come over. He breathed out a silent breath, stepped on the wild grass in the courtyard, walked under the eaves, and planned to explore this quadrangle. This seems to be where the disciples of the temple lived. It was piled up with old, dusty furniture, and the air was filled with a faint, decayed smell. Zhang Yuanqing explored each room one by one, without any special discoveries, until he pushed open the lattice door at the far east. Creak, the door that had been sealed for countless years was opened again. Dust fell rustlingly. Zhang Yuanqing patted the dust that fell on his shoulder, his eyes cautiously sweeping every corner of the room. In this room, abandoned for many years, by the window, a corpse leans against the wall, lying there at an angle. From the attire and the fallen miner's hat, it can be inferred that this was another predecessor. Crossing the threshold and entering the room, Zhang Yuanqing shivers, feeling as if the temperature around him has dropped significantly. It's a bit cold. He cautiously approaches the corpse, unfastens the tattered clothing, and as usual, examines the state of the skeleton. This time, he doesn't find shattered bones. The skeleton is well preserved, but when his gaze falls on the shoulder bone of the corpse, his pupils constrict. There is a dramatic fissure on the shoulder bone of the corpse. This is the same as the fracture on the shoulder of the corpse in the main hall, except that the injury suffered by the corpse in front of him is more severe. Only the one in this room and the one in the main hall have fractured shoulder bones. Is it a coincidence? He mutters with a sense of unease. Next, Zhang Yuanqing notices that the pocket of the corpse's trousers is bulging, as if hiding something. He reaches in and pulls out an old yellowed book, a dusty bronze mirror, and a yellow paper charm. The charm is painted with twisted patterns in cinnabar, somewhat similar to runes, which converge into a character that appears to be the traditional Chinese character for corpse. As he examines the yellow paper charm, a piece of information in fluorescent blue appears before his eyes. Name: corpse suppressing charm. Type: consumable. Function: suppressing the undead. Introduction: a charm made by a powerful nocturnal god. It's the bane of all undead creatures. Stick it on the forehead of the undead to complete the seal. Note: it can only be used once. The fluorescent blue information is similar to his attribute panel. Obviously, this is a hint from the spiritual realm. This is the first time Zhang Yuanqing has seen such a hint since entering the eerie ancient temple. It must be an important item. Zhang Yuanqing folds it neatly and puts it in the pocket of his assault jacket, zipping it up. Thinking for a moment, he unzips the pocket again, because he remembers a gag from a martial arts novel. A swordsman with excellent sword skills liked to wrap his sword in cloth and carry it on his back. One day, a challenger challenged him while he was eating, then the swordsman was no more. His cause of death was the inconvenience of unwrapping the cloth. Zhang Yuanqing then picks up the ancient book and bronze mirror, but no related information appears. He sets the bronze mirror aside and carefully flips through the pages of the yellowed, brittle book. It reads, I have been in the Three Dao Mountain Goddess Temple for 2.5 years. I have learned to read and write. The eldest brother said that when the master returns from delivering the souls of the dead, he will officially initiate me into the practice of the swallowing moon nourishing soul technique. This is the entry-level method to become a nocturnal god. The Yen King is rebelling, and war is imminent. As the strongest person in the lineage of the nocturnal god of Song Mansion, the master has no choice but to descend the mountain to deliver the souls of the dead. Otherwise, if the war is not settled and the Yin calamities rise again, the people will not be at peace. Zhang Yuanqing feels a bit of a sore shoulder, gives it a rub, and preliminarily determines that this is a journal, a diary. The content of the diary is the author's experiences of cultivation and life in the temple. According to the handwriting, this diary and the papers on the corpse in the main hall are from the same source. From phrases like Yen King's rebellion, the timeline corresponds to the historical period of the Jingnan rebellion, but he is not sure if this temple really existed in history, because the content of the journal mentions cultivation, nocturnal god, breathing techniques, charms, and other impressive terms. Zhang Yuanqing rubs his sore shoulder, takes a cautious look around the room, listens for any noise outside, and continues reading the diary when he is sure nothing is amiss. Soon, he turns to the follow-up of the content in the main hall. The first few pages have been torn off, and the subsequent content reads, the sun sets, and it finally gets dark. I hear a knock on the door and hurriedly open it. The person standing outside the door is not the master, but the eldest brother who disappeared last night. The eldest brother who disappeared for a day and a night has returned, but I feel no joy because he is dead. What returned is a corpse. His chest is soaked in blood, and his heart has been gouged out by someone. The eldest brother stares straight at me. He says, don't trust the master. These few lines are written crookedly, suggesting that the author was in a state of shock when writing this. Zhang Yuanqing finds no further entries when he turns the next page. The author never wrote in the diary again. Hiss, what does don't trust the master mean? Zhang Yuanqing is chilled by this twist. Is the temple keeper the one who killed the eldest brother? Is he also the culprit behind the successive disappearances of the disciples? Zhang Yuanqing rubs his shoulder, puts the diary back into the pocket of the corpse, and is about to leave with the bronze mirror in hand. But when he catches a glimpse of the bronze mirror out of the corner of his eye, his body stiffens. The moonlight is like water, casting onto the mirror. His reflection is in the mirror, and on his back, a person is lying. The person's face is pale, lips are deep purple, with a pair of white eyes. The head is leaning on Zhang Yuanqing's shoulder, those white eyes, staring at him lifelessly. His sanity instantly plummeted to 0. A chill surged up from his tailbone, shooting straight to his skull. Zhang Yuanqing, like a startled cat, leapt high on the spot, a curse slipping from his lips. Damn it. This was an instinctive reaction when humans are subjected to intense stimulation or fright. He finally understood why his shoulder was so sore, and why the corpse by the window carried a bronze mirror. It was to check if he had been shouldered by a vengeful spirit. When did it perch on my shoulder? When I entered the courtyard or this room? Who gave me the courage to explore? Liang Qingyu? His mind was like a boiling pot, various thoughts popping up in an instant, fear washing over him like a tide. Although he knew there were eerie and terrifying things in this temple and was somewhat prepared, facing ghosts and goblins head-on still brought indescribable panic. That's right, I have a charm. Zhang Yuanqing fumbled for the yellow paper charm in his jacket pocket and slapped it onto his shoulder, hoping for the best. Whack, the charm landed on his shoulder. He lifted the bronze mirror, cautiously peered into it, and the man with a pale face and black lips, his eyes a dead white, remained on his shoulder. It's ineffective. This thing isn't a corpse. His last shred of hope faded. Zhang Yuanqing felt his shoulder growing increasingly sore, his limbs turning cold. This was not an illusion, but a real loss of his vital energy. At this moment, he thought of the corpse under the table in the main hall, and the predecessor who died under the window. He was likely to die here just like them. A bone-chilling coldness welled up in his heart. Tap, tap. Suddenly, at this critical moment, faint footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. The steps were light, but in the silence of the night, they were incredibly clear. Zhang Yuanqing's heart tightened. He quickly crouched down, next to the corpse under the window. The sound of the footsteps was familiar, reminiscent of the ones he heard when he entered the temple. Tap, 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 the footsteps grew closer, heading this way. Zhang Yuanqing dared not breathe, his body tensed, vaguely hearing his own frantic heartbeat. As the footsteps passed the window, Zhang Yuanqing couldn't resist a glance at the room's floor. The moonlight shone in, casting a grid-like shadow on the floor. The window wasn't high, only waist-high. If a normal person walked past the window, they would definitely cast a shadow on the floor. But he saw nothing. This meant that whatever was passing by the window didn't have a body. Fortunately, the footsteps didn't stop or enter the room but gradually faded away. He silently let out a sigh of relief, straining his ears for the retreating footsteps, hearing them step into the courtyard, creating a rustling sound as they trampled the overgrown grass. Then they stopped. A few seconds later, the footsteps resumed. This time, the footsteps were not just walking but had a certain rhythm and pattern. What was it doing in the courtyard? Zhang Yuanqing, propping up his cold body, struggled to stand and peered out through the tattered window paper. Under the moonlight, in the overgrown grass, a pair of brand-new, Western-style red dancing shoes were performing a tap dance in the night. Moonlit night. Abandoned temple, red dancing shoes, solo dance. This scene was absurd and eerie, yet exuded an indescribable loneliness. Why were there Western-style dancing shoes in a temple from the Ming dynasty? This ruined temple was becoming more and more bizarre. He quietly crouched back down, patiently waiting. As time passed, the vengeful spirit on his shoulder continued to drain his vital energy. His body felt increasingly stiff, and the soreness in his shoulder turned into a sharp pain. He felt that if this continued, he would either die from the loss of vital energy or from a shattered shoulder. In the throes of agony, the dance in the courtyard ceased. Zhang Yuanqing still didn't dare to raise his head. He waited a while longer before cautiously peering out the window at the courtyard. The courtyard was bathed in moonlight, the overgrown grass standing still. The eerie dancing shoes had left. He breathed a sigh of relief. As he was about to stand, his knees gave out, and he fell to the ground. His teeth chattered from the cold, producing a clattering sound, making him feel as if he was in the depths of winter. He picked up the bronze mirror with trembling hands. In the dull mirror, Zhang Yuanqing saw his pallid face, his listless expression, his dull pupils. He looked like a dying patient, not a healthy person. On his shoulder, the vengeful spirit with black lips eerily and silently stared at him. If this continued, he would undoubtedly die. But what could he do? He couldn't touch the vengeful spirit on his shoulder. The intense pain in his shoulder forced him to lean against the wall for support. He glanced at the corpse of the worker. The positioning of the two bodies was eerily similar. So this is how it ends. Zhang Yuanqing gave a bitter smile. He seemed to see his own end, hear the sigh of the Grim Reaper. But Zhang Yuanqing didn't give up his will to live. His brain was still active, like a CPU working in overdrive, looking for a glimmer of hope in this desperate situation. In a flash, the image of the corpse under the table in the main hall flashed through his mind amid the chaotic flow of information. The two corpses had different degrees of shoulder fractures. The corpse in the main hall didn't have a fatal shoulder injury. Did the vengeful spirit let him go? No, a vengeful spirit wouldn't show mercy. Why did he hide under the table? The red dancing shoes were following me stealthily when I entered the temple, but when I entered the main hall, they left. At this thought, a glimmer of hope sparkled in Zhang Yuanqing's dull eyes. Head back to the main hall, now. He immediately stood up and left the room with shaky steps, each step as difficult as if he were carrying a mountain. Thud! He fell in the courtyard, landing in the overgrown grass, unable to get up. Zhang Yuanqing's teeth chattered, and he felt as if he were in the midst of a harsh winter. He thought of the corpse under the table in the main hall. The position of the two bodies was eerily similar. So this is how it ends. Zhang Yuanqing gave a bitter smile. He seemed to see his own end, hear the sigh of the Grim Reaper. But Zhang Yuanqing didn't give up his will to live. His brain was still active, like a CPU working in overdrive, looking for a glimmer of hope in this desperate situation. In a flash, the image of the corpse under the table in the main hall flashed through his mind amid the chaotic flow of information. The two corpses had different degrees of shoulder fractures. The corpse in the main hall didn't have a fatal shoulder injury. Did the vengeful spirit let him go? No, a vengeful spirit wouldn't show mercy. Why did he hide under the table? The red dancing shoes were following me stealthily when I entered the temple, but when I entered the main hall, they left. At this thought, a glimmer of hope sparkled in Zhang Yuanqing's dull eyes. Head back to the main hall, now. He immediately stood up and left the room with shaky steps, each step as difficult as if he were carrying a mountain. Thud! He fell in the courtyard, landing in the overgrown grass, unable to get up. The severe cold stole away the heat, eroding the will. Zhang Yuanqing crawled bit by bit in the direction of the main hall, exerting all his strength. He held his head high, allowing the silhouette of the building ahead to always be reflected in his eyes. That way, the hope in his eyes would not extinguish. It would normally take about a minute to walk from the main hall, but now it felt as distant as the ends of the earth. Finally, at the moment he crawled into the corner of the main hall, a phantom scream sounded in his ears, his shoulder lightened, and the negative effects of cold, dizziness, and stiffness disappeared instantly. Zhang Yuanqing rolled and crawled onto the pedestal, staggered around to the front of the main hall, pushed open the lattice door, and threw himself into the threshold. The candlelight was like a beam, dispelling the gloom and bringing warmth as refreshing as a spring breeze. He lay spread-eagled on the ground, his chest heaving with panting breaths. He lay there for 2 or 3 minutes before he felt like he had finally come back to life. It was too terrifying, too terrifying. My conjecture was correct. The main hall is a safe haven. Based on the different shoulder injuries of the two skeletons, he deduced that something had stopped the ghost from pursuing the person inside the hall and the worker who died curled up under the table. This was consistent with a person's psychology of hiding in extreme fear that in the mind of this predecessor worker, the main hall was safe. And the fact that the red dancing shoes gave up chasing him indirectly verified this guess. For the following time, Zhang Yuanqing stayed in the main hall until the pain in his shoulder lessened and his body temperature recovered. As expected, he did not encounter any danger again. If the main hall is a safe house, then my chances of survival have undoubtedly increased greatly. Even if the shoulder ghost sucks my essence again, I can escape back to the main hall. But if I encounter both the ghost and the red dancing shoes, I guess I won't be able to escape back to the main hall. And the most bizarre and terrifying source of this temple is definitely not just the ghost. He did not get complacent because he had resolved a life and death crisis. This ancient temple was not that simple. You should know that before him, a whole construction team died here. After resting for a long time, he gradually let go of his fear and was hesitating whether to continue exploring outside. The voice in his mind sounded again. Frowny face. Main task 1. Survive for 3 hours. Main task 2. Explore spiritual realm number 0079. Progress, 20%. Primordial Heavenly Sovereign, congratulations on completing one main task. Calculating your reward. Item/tool obtained, corpse suppressing charm. Experience gained, 15%, item slot unlocked. You will have 36 hours of rest time. Spiritual realm number 0079. Next opening, 35 hours 59 minutes and 40 seconds. The scenery in the main hall twisted, like the surface of water ruffled by the wind. When the picture cleared again, Zhang Yuanqing saw the bright energy-saving lamp, the spacious bed, the desk, the PS5 game console, the open window, the wind blowing in, the curtains swaying slightly. He was back in the human world. Am I back? He looked around in surprise, confirming that he was really back in his room. Then his knees gave way and he threw himself onto the soft bed. He took a deep breath, and the air seemed sweet. It's good to be alive. The human world is good. After calming down for a few minutes, Zhang Yuanqing sat up, unzipped his assault jacket, and found that the corpse-suppressing charm was indeed gone. Zhang Yuanqing naturally thought of taking out the item, and the next moment, a grid of fluorescent blue appeared before his eyes. There were 5 grids in total, and lying in the first one was the yellow paper charm. It was a strange experience. When the item slot was unlocked, this function seemed to become his instinct. He didn't need to learn how to open the item slot. In addition to the corpse-suppressing charm, I also gained 15% experience, but my level is still 0, which means I have not yet become a night wanderer god. I am still an ordinary person. Surviving for 3 hours almost killed me. How do I do the second task? Is this what S-level difficulty is? The more Zhang Yuanqing thought about it, the more desperate he felt. He felt like he had been tricked by Brother Bing. This damn card can indeed change one's life. But it is indeed difficult to control. He was very self-aware. He was just a college student who had never even killed a chicken. It would be very difficult for him to survive on his own in the subsequent second task. As a righteous and promising young man in a socialist society, he should rely on the state and the government at this time. So he picked up his phone, intending to dial his cousin's number, but stopped when his finger touched the phone screen. Because Zhang Yuanqing thought that he might have a better choice, he immediately got out of bed and found the business card left by the big man in the drawer of the desk. The business card had his name and contact information. Tonight's experience made him think of Brother Bing's mysterious disappearance. If he hadn't been able to come out alive, then he would have mysteriously disappeared too. It's certain that Brother Bing had long been in contact with the so-called spiritual realm, so his disappearance may have been due to entering a certain spiritual realm. Following this line of thought, the investigators from the Bureau of Public Security are credible. He chose to contact the big man for another reason, which was that the other party said he might also disappear, which was hinting that he would enter the spiritual realm. Combining this with the fact that his cousin was unaware, Zhang Yuanqing had reason to deduce that the 3 of them were special personnel specifically dealing with such incidents. After thinking it through, Zhang Yuanqing dialed the number on the business card. The dial tone sounded for a few seconds, then the other party picked up the phone, and a mature, deep male voice asked, "Who is this?" Taking a deep breath, Zhang Yuanqing tried to calm his voice. "Officerly, this is Zhang Yuanqing." "It's you." The voice on the other end laughed. "What's the matter, calling me in the middle of the night?" "I have a lead to report. Actually, before Lei Yibing disappeared, he sent me a postcard." "Why didn't you say this before?" There was no surprise in Li Dong's voice. This. Zhang Yuanqing hesitated a little, telling his suspicion about Lei's disappearance to the other party. After a moment of silence on the other end, a laugh emerged. "You kid knows how to dramatize." Guanya was right. Zhang Yuanqing was indeed a solitary person. An optimistic and positive regular college student wouldn't be so guarded. "I'm sorry." Zhang Yuanqing felt a bit awkward, quickly shifting the topic, or rather, getting to the point. "I encountered some strange and perplexing things tonight. Do you understand what I mean?" "So it seems, you have successfully walked out of the spirit realm." Li Dong's voice carried a hint of relief. Yes, just got out, almost died in there. Hearing this response, Zhang Yuanqing felt reassured. The other party indeed knew about the spirit realm. Li Dongzi said, college student, congratulations on becoming a spirit realm walker, that's what we call people like us. I am also a spirit realm walker, except I am official, and you are wild. Spirit realm walker. Zhang Yuanqing tasted the phrase, then asked, what is the spirit realm? He had too many questions and needed to start from the basics. I can't tell you now. If you want to understand the spirit realm, you have to make a choice. Li Dongzi said in a deep voice, the official attitude toward spirit realm is divided into two types, one is to absorb and cultivate, the other is to supervise and control. The former represents joining us, becoming a member of the official spirit realm walkers. The latter is to be a loose cultivator, just registering with us, promising not to use abilities against the rules, and we won't interfere. Of course, you won't get any help from the official. Without any hesitation, Zhang Yuanqing said, I am willing to join the organization, to shed my blood and sacrifice my life for the country and the people. Li Dongzi laughed, well said, coming from a law enforcement family, you are very aware. Zhang Yuanqing couldn't tell whether the other party was mocking or complimenting him. Then rest early, I'll pick you up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Li Dongzi said, huh? Not now. Zhang Yuanqing hesitated, tomorrow? What else, what time is it now? If you want to shed blood and sacrifice your life for the organization, you have to wait until the organization is open for business. You don't want to say it on the phone, right? Afraid I'll renege and freeload information. So you have to wait until tomorrow to meet offline. Zhang Yuanqing could only say helplessly, all right. After hanging up the phone, he glanced at his phone. The time was 11 o'clock at night. The passage of time in the spirit realm was the same as in the outside world. Having successfully contacted the official organization, Zhang Yuanqing felt reassured. At this moment, the fatigue from struggling for survival in the spirit realm came rushing back. He lay down on the bed, set the alarm clock, his eyelids getting heavier and heavier, and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, at 7:15, Zhang Yuanqing was awakened by the alarm clock, nearly having a heart attack and dying on the spot. As he turned off the alarm clock, he got out of bed while yawning. He didn't sleep well last night, having several nightmares, all related to ghosts and monsters. Waking up several times. In the living room, his grandfather was sitting on the sofa watching the news. His hair was sparse and silver, his figure tall, his face was full of wrinkles and serious, with no smile. His grandmother was in the kitchen making breakfast with a lot of noise. At the edge of the long dining table, his aunt was squatting on the chair playing with her phone, puffing up her cheeks like a cute hamster. Why are you up so early? His aunt looked at her lethargic nephew and mumbled, you look like you've overindulged. Did you do something bad last night? I'm going to check your trash can. On a normal day, Zhang Yuanqing would retort, going to find food, but now, with the spirit realm and the meeting with the official organization on his mind, he had no mood to bicker with his aunt. He slumped down next to this woman, waiting for the meal with a vacant look in his eyes. Soon, his grandmother brought out hot porridge, fried dough sticks, boiled eggs, and a steamer of meat buns. Zhang Yuanqing took a sip of the hot porridge to moisten his throat, and looked at his grandfather. Tentatively asking, Grandpa, I remember after the construction team disappeared in the Xiling Tunnel, the Public Security Bureau organized a search team to look for them, and you were in it. Grandpa, Ed, looking a bit puzzled, it's all old news, why are you asking about this? I read about this story again on the internet yesterday. Do you know how the worker who was found is doing now? Grandpa frowned, I forgot, it's been so long, I can't remember. Wasn't it said that he disappeared again? His grandmother chimed in, joining the discussion with interest, and it was a bizarre disappearance. This matter caused a lot of panic in the police force back then. It was only when the head of the police bureau personally came to calm things down that it was over. Really? Grandpa didn't admit it. Old Chen, are you getting senile in your old age? You told me about this yourself. Grandmother insisted. Grandpa lowered his head to drink his porridge. Believe in science, don't be interested in these superstitions, the older you get, the more gossip you are. Disappeared again after being found. Zhang Yuanqing drank his porridge with a low mood. Clearly, the survivor entered the spirit realm again 36 hours later, and this time, he didn't come out alive. As he had anticipated, the death rate at the Mountain God Temple was extremely high, and the second mainline task was very, very dangerous. To survive, relying on the official was the right decision. After breakfast, he quickly washed up, took the elevator downstairs, and waited at the entrance of the residential area for about 10 minutes. A black business car slowly pulled up, the electric door slid open, and Li Dongzi was sitting on a white leather sofa, his legs crossed and leaning on his cane. His outfit was the same as yesterday, a black suit, black vest, white shirt, neatly combed hair, and a finely trimmed small mustache. Get in, college student. Li Dongzi smiled. All right, investigator. Zhang Yuanqing returned the smile. After he got in the car, the black business car merged into the traffic, driving at a steady pace on the morning streets. As Li Dongzi opened the car refrigerator, he asked, "What do you want to drink?" "Coke." "Then you'll have to go to the supermarket and buy it yourself later." Li Dongzi poured himself a glass of whiskey, adding an ice ball, held the glass, leaned back in the chair, and said leisurely, "I'm taking you to complete the entry procedures now, and to give you some basic training. First, let me introduce myself, Li Dongzi, a level 3 Spirit Realm Walker, member of the Songhai branch of the Five Elements Alliance, captain of the second team of Kongyang District. My profession is Scout." "Scout? Are there other professions besides Night Traveler?" Zhang Yuanqing made a serious listening gesture. Although he was confused, he didn't interrupt. As a person who is good at socializing, Zhang Yuanqing knows that it's impolite to interrupt others at random, and he won't let himself lose points on these small things. Li Dongzi took a sip of his drink and said, "Let's start with, what is the spirit realm?" Zhang Yuanqing immediately perked up. Li Dongzi carefully chose his words, saying, "Spiritual realm is a supernatural force that currently cannot be scientifically explained. Even though we have been trying to dissect it, understand it, we still do not have a clear understanding of it. The spiritual realm exists in reality, but is detached from it, and only those who are chosen can enter it. And the way of being chosen." He took a sip of wine and said with a smile, "You should have experienced it." "The card?" Zhang Yuanqing responded in time. Li Dongzi nodded slightly. "It's called the roll card. Those who get the roll card will start a trial task, and by passing the trial, they can get a corresponding profession, possessing the skills and characteristics of that profession. The mechanism by which the spiritual realm selects walkers is still unknown, and the way it issues roll cards is not fixed. Sometimes it will appear directly in your body, sometimes you will pick it up on the road, sometimes you will accidentally click on a link online. Completing the trial task is just the beginning. If spiritual realm walkers want to level up and become stronger, they must keep taking tasks and entering the spiritual realm. But don't worry, the frequency of tasks is not too high, and not all spiritual realm scenarios will be life-threatening. On the contrary, some spiritual realms can be quite entertaining. For example, I myself, a level 3 scout, have entered the spiritual realm 6 times in the past 2 years, 3 of which were solo spiritual realms where I almost died. The other 3 times were multi-person confrontations and multi-person team spiritual realms, which were relatively safer and more interesting. To gain superpowers, you always have to pay a price. Li Dongzi paused for a moment, giving Zhang Yuanqing time to ask questions. "So it's similar to game dungeons?" Zhang Yuanqing gave his own understanding. Li Dongzi showed a smile. "I like talking to young people like you because you're quick to understand and actively engage with new things." After praising him, Li Dongzi nodded. "That's right, it's like playing a game, and the spiritual realm is the dungeon. Some dungeons are single-player, some are multiplayer team-ups or multiplayer confrontations. And the single-player ones are the most dangerous, with the highest death rate. Multiplayer ones are relatively better, with death type and penalty type. The latter just deducts a certain amount of experience points." Zhang Yuanqing asked curiously, "Why is the death rate highest in single-player?" Li Dongzi pondered for a moment. "In a multiplayer spiritual realm, you will encounter spiritual realm walkers of other professions, but in a single-player one, it's your own profession. Take the scout for example. The transcendent ability of this profession is insight, tracking, analysis. So the 3 single-player spiritual realms I encountered were playing detective to solve a case, chasing criminals in the jungle for a mutual hunt, and wilderness survival. In addition, for each profession, the spiritual realm dungeons at the transcendent stage and the saint stage are different. My profession is Night Traveler, and I enter the supernatural dungeon. Phew, luckily there are multiplayer dungeons, otherwise I would have been scared to death in the spiritual realm. The saint stage spiritual realm dungeon will change." Zhang Yuanqing listened and nodded as he went along. Did Lei Yibing's disappearance have something to do with him entering the spiritual realm? Zhang Yuanqing asked solemnly. He urgently needed confirmation from an official figure to verify his guess. If Brother Bing had entered the spiritual realm, then things might not be so bad. Li Dongzi thought for a while and said, "After Lei Yibing's mysterious disappearance, the official personnel from the Hangzhou Police Department took over the case. Their judgment is that Lei Yibing has already died in the spiritual realm." Zhang Yuanqing felt a sudden stop in his heart, and couldn't help feeling anxious and panicked. "Why?" Li Dongzi explained, "Because it's been too long. The normal spiritual realm dungeons, at least at the transcendent level, are short, lasting a few hours, and long, lasting a day or 2. But Lei Yibing has been missing for 4 days. The transcendent stage represents levels 1 to 3. What about above the transcendent stage? I'm not sure, but there should be longer dungeons. Maybe Brother Bing is a powerful spiritual realm walker." Zhang Yuanqing could only comfort himself this way. For Brother Bing's disappearance, at his current stage, whether it's his abilities or his knowledge, he is destined to be unable to help much. Compared to this, joining the official organization and then saving himself is the most important thing right now. By the way, before I introduce you to the official organization, there's one very important thing. Li Dongzi took a sip of wine to moisten his throat. What's your morality value? 60 points, the initial value. Zhang Yuanqing answered honestly. Li Dongzi nodded. For a newbie like you, the morality value is the biggest pitfall. You must remember this. Why do you say that? Zhang Yuanqing didn't hide his confusion. Do you remember the note under the morality value? Remember, it told me to be a good person. Zhang Yuanqing almost pulled a Hua Zai face. Li Dongzi said solemnly, the initial value of the morality value is 60. If it is lower than this value, it will trigger the punishment mechanism of the spiritual realm, which will report your location to all spiritual realm walkers in the same city and issue a task to clear you. Zhang Yuanqing was dumbfounded and blurted out, so I can never do bad things in my life? Well, I'm not saying I want to do bad things, but being a saint is too tiring. Also, what is the standard for measuring morality value? If doing crafts, posting racy pictures and such are considered moral decadence, then he's done for. Li Dongzi laughed, seemingly enjoying the look on the faces of the newbies, and slowly said, don't be so nervous. According to our observations, spiritual realm walkers who steal, rob, hurt people, will lose 1 to 5 points of morality value depending on the severity of the case. Killing deducts 10 points of morality value. Causing serious consequences, multiple deaths and injuries, will deduct corresponding morality value according to the severity of the case. As for some deficits in private virtues, they won't affect the moral value. Besides, moral value can be deducted, but it can also be accumulated. That's why I urge you to be a good person. This mechanism seems to be deliberately designed to regulate spiritual realm walkers, but why does the spiritual realm need to restrain its walkers? Morality and laws are all created by humans to maintain order. In the natural world, besides humans, other creatures do not need these things. In other words, unless the stance of the spiritual realm is human, the existence of moral value seems somewhat unreasonable, but the spiritual realm is a supernatural phenomenon. Zhang Yuanqing instinctively felt that this restriction was unreasonable, but since Li Dongzi did not explain, it showed that he did not understand the reason. It is not difficult to see from the previous conversation that the official understanding of the spiritual realm is limited. Zhang Yuanqing suddenly understood, I see, no wonder it's a big pitfall for newcomers. So how do you accumulate moral value? After a novice gets superpowers, they often use their abilities to do things they wanted to do before but couldn't, like making money, and the methods for quick money are all written in the criminal law. There is also eating abalone. Well, I wonder if helping poor girls would reduce moral value? In the definition of the spiritual realm, does this count as a deficit in private virtue, or is it illegal? Zhang Yuanqing didn't dare to ask this question. After all, they were not familiar with each other yet, and he didn't want to leave a bad impression in the mind of his future leader. Accumulating moral value is as simple as reducing it. Just do good deeds. In fact, many evil organizations' spiritual realm walkers are keen on charity and donations, because this is the fastest way to accumulate moral value. As long as you have enough money, you can kill without fear. Li Dongzi chuckled. How ironic, isn't it? You never know the true face behind those who do charity. And what's even more ironic is that human life can be measured by money. This is true in reality, and it's the same in the spiritual realm. Moreover, there will be no deduction of moral value for killing among spiritual realm walkers. After Zhang Yuanqing initially digested this information, Li Dongzi continued, next, let's talk about official organizations. The official organization we belong to is called the Five Elements Alliance, which is composed of 5 major powers, namely the Baihua Society, the White Tiger Soldiers, the Red Fire Gang, the Water God Palace, and the Central Court. The 5 major powers represent 5 professions: wood demons, scouts, fire masters, water ghosts, and earth monsters. Zhang Yuanqing couldn't help but grumble in his heart, why are the official organizations all monsters and ghosts? In addition to the 5 Elements Alliance, there are several organizations with official backgrounds. I will send you the information later. Li Dongzi fumbled with his wine glass and said, the 5 major groups within the 5 Elements Alliance have allied in the past 20 years. Before that, they each had their own policies and their relationships were not harmonious. This involves the 5 elements generation and restraint, as well as the different habits of each profession. Li Dongzi took a sip of wine, shrugged his shoulders. Just take the Baihua Societies with demons as an example. They are a group of extreme environmentalists and members of the Animal Protection Association. My God, they even tried to push the 5 Elements Alliance headquarters to issue a ban on members eating dog meat. God is not as outrageous as they are. Every time I see their abnormal faces of loving animals, I can't help but want to kick their buttocks with my leather shoes. Next, Li Dongzhe severely criticized the four major professions other than the White Tiger soldiers. This gave Zhang Yuanqing a more intuitive understanding of the other organizations of the Five Elements Alliance, such as the Red Fire Gang who would act rather than talk, the Water God Palace who likes to cultivate viruses and bacteria with a gloomy personality, and the Earth Boss Central Court who is engaged in real estate and mining development. Only our White Tiger soldiers scouts are wise, calm and resolute, a perfect profession. Li Dongzhe concluded. Zhang Yuanqing thought to himself, would the other four major organizations agree with your statement? The more I say, the more it sounds like a game, right? Some people within the Five Elements Alliance also call the spiritual realm a game server. Spiritual realm walkers have character panels, props, tasks to do, and each different spiritual realm is like a different copy. Besides, it also has different professions. The Red Fire Gang is impulsive and likes to advocate violence, just like berserkers. The Water God Palace has water control abilities, they are water mages. The Baihua Society can raise pets and cure diseases, they are priests and summoners. The Central Court is typically a tank. Zhang Yuanqing couldn't help but joke, so are your scouts the eyes in the game that cost 75 gold coins each? Li Dongzhe was taken aback, his hand gripping the handle of his staff tightened, and he said without any expression, if I were a fire master from the Red Fire Gang, I would have already smashed your dog's head with one blow. I'm sorry. Zhang Yuanqing apologized decisively. After the joke, the atmosphere between the two became more harmonious. Li Dongzhe laughed. After passing the transcendent stage, scouts will have extremely strong individual combat capabilities. When I say this is a perfect profession, I'm not bragging. Of course, among the orthodox professions, night wanderers are universally recognized as the strongest profession. I'm talking about orthodox professions, not evil ones. Even we scouts have to admit that night wanderers are a bit more perfect than us. Are night wanderers very strong? Can they beat 10? Zhang Yuanqing was delighted in his heart. Can you tell me about the night wanderer profession? Li Dongzhe was amused but also understood the young man's admiration for strength. He said night wanderers can exert extremely strong assassination abilities at the beginning of the transcendent realm, and their burst of power is also very considerable. In addition, they also have the ability to communicate with souls and refine corpses to control spirits. Their skills are diverse and their combat power is strong. However, the number of night wanderers is extremely small. At present, there are no night wanderers in Songhai City branch. This is because there are too few night wanderer trial realms in Songhai, and also because Tai Gate in the capital is continuously absorbing night wanderers from all over the country. At this point, it was natural for him to ask about the new employee's profession, saying, "What's your profession?" "I hope you're not a fire master, I hate rude and impulsive young people the most." "Night wanderer," Zhang Yuanqing calmly stated. "I was asking about your profession." "Night wanderer." Li Dongzhe was taken aback at first, then he suddenly straightened his back, leaned forward, and stared at Zhang Yuanqing with burning eyes, saying, Are you a night wanderer?" "Yes." Zhang Yuanqing nodded. "SSS." Li Dongzhe shifted in his seat. He took about 10 seconds to digest this news, then raised his voice and asked once again, "You are a night wanderer? Have I just stumbled upon a night wanderer?" This was something he had never expected, as if he had just casually wished to hit a 5 million lottery and then he really did. "I've hit the jackpot." Li Dongzhe put down his glass, repeatedly examining Zhang Yuanqing, his face excited. Every night wanderer was a hot commodity. They were the targets of competition among various spirit realm teams, even among gangs. Li Dongzhe knew of a young woman from the 100 Flowers Club who, in order to dig out a night wanderer informant from the Red Fire Gang, resorted to seduction, and through the means of rolling in the sheets, persuaded him to switch sides and voluntarily join the 100 Flowers Club. Becoming a servant to two families, because of this, the Red Fire Gang and the 100 Flowers Club nearly came to blows, and even the intervention of the Five Elements League headquarters was ineffective. It was only after that night wanderer died during a spirit realm mission that things calmed down. "By the way, I still don't know your spirit realm ID." Li Dongzhe, hiding his excitement, maintained a composed image in front of his future subordinate. Zhang Yuanqing puffed out his chest and said with energy gathered at the tip of his tongue, "Primordial Heavenly Sovereign." Li Dongzhe was silent for a few seconds, then clapped his hands and said, "Great name. Hey, your compliment sounds forced, and why do you look like you want to hit me?" Zhang Yuanqing modestly said, "As long as the leader likes it." At this time, the black business car drove into the Kongyang District Public Security Bureau and parked in a parking spot next to the green belt. "I'll arrange for your onboarding process right now. Your salary is 20,000 a month, there will be allowances for missions, and additional performance bonuses for meritorious deeds. Any questions?" Li Dongzhe seemed to not want to delay a moment, showing an eagerness to secure the deal. 20,000 a month? Zhang Yuanqing's eyes lit up, "No problem. 20,000 a month, even in a big city like Shanghai, is considered a high salary. Zhang Yuanqing remembered that in his mother's company, the management's monthly salary was only 50 to 100,000. Of course, this was just the base salary, not including bonuses, commissions, and shares. He followed Li Dongzi out of the car and walked around to the back of the Public Security Bureau building, stopping in front of a two-story small building. This small building is made up of huge pieces of glass. It looks very artsy and elite. Upon entering the front door of the small building, directly in front of the entrance is a steel staircase that leads to the second floor. The left side of the first floor is the office area, where 7 or 8 women are seated by the desks. There are pretty young girls, mature and charming young women, as well as capable and steady aunts. The right side is the living area, with a sofa, round table, refrigerator, induction cooker, water dispenser, and other living appliances. They are either working with their heads down, watching dramas with headphones on, or gathering in groups of 2 or 3 to discuss gossip. When they saw Li Dongzi come in, they just looked up and continued to do their own thing, without the usual fear that employees have for their leaders. I like this office atmosphere. Zhang Yuanqing muttered to himself. Li Dongzi did not linger. He led Zhang Yuanqing towards the steel staircase, then suddenly turned around and said, "These are ordinary staff, they only serve us spirit realm walkers. If you need anything in your life and work, just instruct them." Work and personal secretary. Zhang Yuanqing nodded. The two of them came to the second floor. The noisy chatter quieted down. The layout of the second floor was much simpler. The entire left side was Li Dongzi's personal office, and on the right were 9 desks. Most of them were empty. Only 2 desks had people in front of them. They were the investigators who visited his home yesterday, the long-legged sister, and the disheveled, dazed-looking engineering dog. "Guya, help him with the onboarding process." Li Dongzi called out from a distance, smiling, "I've recruited a new colleague for you." The engineering man raised his head, glanced at Zhang Yuanqing, nodded slightly, then lowered his head and continued to busy himself with his work. The mixed-race beauty showed a smile, stood up and said as she walked, "It seems you successfully completed the trial mission, little boy with a thing for mature women." Little boy with a thing for mature women? Zhang Yuanqing was momentarily stunned, then he heard Li Dongzi next to him say, "Guya likes to joke around, you'll get used to it." He then scolded his female subordinate, "Don't say strange things in front of our young college student, he's still a child." The child casually glanced at the approaching mixed-race beauty, dressed in an OL suit, her shirt tucked into her skirt, outlining her slim waist, her long, round legs wrapped in black stockings, and her slightly curled long hair swaying with her steps. Her face was sharp and cute, with the three-dimensional delicacy of Westerners, but her skin was fair and delicate. "Leader Li, I want to inquire about the spirit realm trial." Zhang Yuanqing didn't forget his purpose today. "There's something you can ask Guya about, I have other things to deal with." Li Dongzi said kindly. His tone was like a class teacher treating an outstanding student. Having given his instructions, he rushed back to his office, planning to report the news of recruiting a night wanderer to his superiors. Did the leader take the wrong medicine today? He's practically floating. Guya muttered to herself, then turned to look at Zhang Yuanqing and smiled. "Come with me to fill out a form, and give me your ID." "I didn't bring my ID." "Give me your ID number." She led Zhang Yuanqing to an empty desk and sat down, threw him a form, noted down Zhang Yuanqing's ID number, then went downstairs. Zhang Yuanqing picked up a pen from the pen holder, uncapped it while examining the form. This form was different from regular onboarding forms. It corresponded to the attribute panel of spirit realm walkers. Besides basic information like profession, level, there was also a column for the trial spirit realm. "Just right, later I'll ask about how to get through the Shi Ling Tunnel dungeon." Zhang Yuanqing filled in truthfully. By the time he finished filling out the form, Guya had just returned, holding 2 contracts in her hand. She pulled over an office chair and sat down next to him, her round buttocks sinking into the chair. "The leader should have given you basic training, right?" She leaned lazily against the back of the chair, this posture fully displaying her impressive chest. Zhang Yuanqing caught a whiff of a refreshing fragrance, and sneakily admired her. In this era where the average level is no more than C-class, an E-class powerhouse is enough to touch one's heart. "Your onboarding process is completed, this is the contract, and there's also a confidentiality agreement." Once Zhang Yuanqing signed, Guya retracted her smiling face and said seriously, "There are a few things I need to tell you. Starting from today, your original ID can't be used, the organization will give you a new ID. It will arrive within 3 days, you can normally purchase high-speed rail tickets, flight tickets, and it has a green channel. The new SIM card, you'll get it tomorrow." "Why?" Zhang Yuanqing didn't understand this operation. "When you named yourself in the spirit realm, it should have prompted you that you can't use your real name." Zhang Yuanqing nodded. Guya said solemnly, "There's a reason for this. We divide the professions in the spirit realm into 2 categories. The first is lawful professions, which are orthodox professions. The second is evil professions. Evil profession spirit realm walkers are either violent and bloodthirsty, or perverted and cruel, and they have a common hobby, which is to hunt orthodox profession spirit realm walkers, which is us. It's very dangerous for spirit realm walkers to expose their identities in reality. Like the factional conflicts in games? Zhang Yuanqing's face became serious. Last night when he was naming himself and was told that he couldn't use his real name, he found it strange. So, Li Dongzi, Guya, they're not their real names either. But don't worry, we are an official organization. Under normal circumstances, we are the hunters, they are the prey. Seeing the smile fade from the young man's face, Guya reassured him. Guya must be an impressive hunter. Zhang Yuanqing sighed with relief, throwing a compliment her way, quite the charmer. Guya's smile deepened and she teased, you have a way with words, how many girlfriends have you had? Single. Guya was taken aback, your trash bin is so clean, I thought you had a girlfriend. What's with you women and trash bins? Zhang Yuanqing silently complained in his mind. Guya chuckled, do you want your big sister to help you buy a girlfriend online? Enough, you woman, no, you old fox. Zhang Yuanqing retorted, no need, I prefer a real girlfriend. Guya laughed uproariously, I like you, kiddo. Well, enough joking, let's get back to business. There are 10 Spirit Realm Walker teams in the entire Kongyang district, we are the second team, with 5 Spirit Realm Walkers in total. With you, we are 6. Among the 5 Spirit Realm Walkers, only the leader and I belong to the White Tiger Soldiers. You were recruited by the leader, and after you pass probation, you will also belong to the White Tiger Soldiers. I hope you remember that. This statement made the prejudice between the factions of the Five Elements Alliance seem deeper than Zhang Yuanqing had imagined. He immediately said, I'll follow Sister Guya from now on. He didn't mention Li Dongzi since this would likely earn him more favor with his new big sister. Indeed, Guya's smile became even brighter, and she said sweetly, besides me and Wang Tai, the other Spirit Realm Walkers usually don't come to clock in for work. You are a student, so you don't need to come every day. Don't be too formal, the leader is a nice person, but when he gets emotional, his tone can be a bit strange, and he has a strong obsession with elegance. As for Wang Tai, he's a scholar by profession, good at learning and research. He's a non-combatant, so you can ask him anything you don't understand. When you graduate from university, you can ask him for help with your thesis. But he's not good at socializing and hates it, so you don't need to deal with him on a regular basis, just treat him as a tool. As for me, she said with a sly smile, I quite enjoy dealing with energetic young men. Zhang Yuanqing was not sure whether she was being serious or just teasing. He quickly assigned labels to his teammates based on his understanding, the elegant leader who occasionally speaks in a strange tone, the socially awkward nerd, the foxy old lady. By the way, what's your star sign? Guya asked. Scorpio. Zhang Yuanqing didn't understand why she suddenly asked this question, but he answered truthfully. Guya looked at him with a strange expression, you really don't have a girlfriend? What does this have to do with my star sign? Zhang Yuanqing was confused. Guya didn't seem to believe him, but she didn't dwell on this topic and picked up the form that Zhang Yuanqing had filled out. Yuanshi Tianzun. 21 years old. Does your ID still have momentum? Aren't you afraid of being beaten when you go out? Yi Yushen, Guya's charming face froze for a moment, and she blurted out, you're Yi Yushen. Zhang Yuanqing was quite enjoying her reaction. No wonder the leader always seems to be floating. Guya muttered, then said cheerfully, now our team also has Yi Yushen, you are not allowed to run off with women from other organizations. Zhang Yuanqing noticed that Wang Tai, who was not far away, also looked over here. Yuanshi Tianzun, well, I'll call you Yuanshi from now on, Guya happily continued, but when she saw the level 0 on the form, she was taken aback. Just as she was about to ask, she saw the next line written, Trial Mission, Xiling Tunnel. Guya's mind buzzed, her mouth slightly open, her expression frozen, and she was stunned on the spot. After a while, she looked at him with a very complicated expression, your trial spirit realm is Xiling Tunnel? Seeing her expression, Zhang Yuanqing felt a sudden thump in his heart, I was just about to ask about the trial mission. Since it's an instance, there must be a strategy, right? After he finished speaking, he saw the so-called antisocial nerd lift his head to look over again, and this time, his eyes were filled with sympathy and pity. You wait. Guya left the office area with a grim expression and headed towards Li Dongzi's office. What's with her dead man walking look just now? Zhang Yuanqing felt a bit uneasy. At this moment, Wang Tai from the next desk said indifferently, it's true that there's a strategy, and it's the duty of every official walker to submit the details of their spirit realm experience. The organization will give corresponding rewards. But, Xiling Tunnel is a bit different, you'll see. He handed over a laptop. Zhang Yuanqing took the laptop with a mix of curiosity and confusion. The screen displayed an open document, Songhai Night Wanderer Spirit Realm Trials Summary. Frowny Face Wang Village Ruins, Sea Level, Mission Requirement, Survive until dawn. The danger in the village comes from the hanging ghosts and the wild graves outside the village. To avoid the hanging ghosts, Spirit Realm Walkers need to stand upside down to avoid danger. But those with weak physical strength can only hope for the best. the resentful spirits in the wild graves will enter the village collectively at midnight. Spirit realm walkers need to go to the convenience store as soon as possible to find incense and candles. Lighting the candles can prevent being eaten by a group of ghosts. Lingang Reservoir, B-level, mission requirement, cross the reservoir. During the crossing, there will be water ghosts trying to pull you down to the bottom. Don't resist, dive and hold your breath for 2 minutes, the water ghost will leave on its own. Ghost Bride, A-level, mission requirement, spend the wedding night with the Ghost Bride until dawn. The Ghost Bride is a beautiful woman, she will treat every groom wildly. She won't hurt her groom as long as you can satisfy her. But theoretically, no man can fight till dawn. This is almost a certain death spirit realm. So far, only one brave man has survived, but since then, he has developed a strong aversion to women. Xiangshui Amusement Park, B-level, mission requirement. Zhang Yuanqing felt more and more wrong as he read, and more confused. Too easy? These trial missions are too easy, except for the Ghost Bride, which requires an iron kidney. The survival rate of other trial spirit realms is quite high, and after reading through the entire document, the highest difficulty level is A level. But his trial mission is the S level Xiling Tunnel. He continued to read and finally saw Xiling Tunnel, Xiling Tunnel, difficulty unknown, mission requirement unknown. The initial incident was during the construction of the tunnel. The construction team mistakenly entered the spirit realm. A total of 12 people entered, only one survived, but was severely traumatized and mentally unstable. 36 hours later, he re-entered the spirit realm and died within. Note, this spirit realm scene is extremely dangerous, and so far, no successful cases of passing through Xiling Tunnel have been found. The last sentence was highlighted in bright red. Zhang Yuanqing was dumbfounded.